Well, hello everyone. This is Sol. I'm coming in from Norway this time, or every time actually. And yes, today on Valentine's Day, happy Valentine's, everybody. I hope you had somebody special to celebrate it with. Personally, I spent the day working and sums it up. I spent my day out working for a business, and it was indeed a very kind of quincunxy day because we had two quincunxes happening today actually, and there's going to be one tomorrow too. It's more symbolic than what can you say, real, because it's just the sun making a quincunx aspect to, oops. If Annie can mute herself, that would be amazing. Yeah, thank you, Annie. And the sun is making an inconjunct aspect or quincunx aspect to the nodal axis, and I thought I'd just comment a little bit on that because we're in that type of energy. And I believe me, you know, I'm working for this business. I do healing and coaching and all kinds of things for this kind of beehive of a business where they work in open office landscapes, and there's always stress and tension because they have to relate to each other. There's men and women there. And of course, that difference between the yin and the yang comes forth very, very clearly in a workplace. And I had some interesting conversation with people today because due to Mercury in Pisces, this is a business who transports and sells salmon to the world. And they're in charge of, you know, their business is trying to get the fish from the breeders to the people who are serving them at the restaurants, etc. in Europe. So they have a lot of logistics going on. So I always had a lot of fun looking at that business when there's anything mercurial going on. And as I just mentioned, Mercury is in Pisces now, and it will be in Pisces for quite a while because it will go retrograde in Pisces in not so long. So they were having a Mercury in Pisces moment at this workplace, and the moon was making an inconjunct to Venus, Saturn, while the day was still fresh, and the moon was in Gemini. And then the sun then, you know, came up in the background as a more inner development because it made a quincunx to the nodal axis. So there were these tensions between my needs and what I want to do and how, you know, and what is required from me and what I want to do. So this is part of the quincunx problem, whether it's a quincunx you meet inside yourself and you have to carry it your entire life, or it is something you meet through the synastry with others, which is very often those relationships that are, well, pretty hard to handle actually. They can be very demanding in terms of your ego. And, you know, there's this thing, if you want to work with the shadow, you have to put the ego aside, otherwise there will be just more tensions arising. So naturally in a business like that, there's a lot of ego bouncing off the walls, and there were a few annoyed people there today, to be quite honest. They had a rough day. So I had to stand there and observe and watch, and I had all this astrology in the background. I had this lecture in the back of my head. I'm also going to present on the quincunx in Serbia this coming March. Both the quincunx and the composites. I will give 2 lectures in Belgrade. So if you're in the area, which might be unlikely, I welcome you to join us. It will be the 8th to the 10th of March in Belgrade. Yes, it's an ISAR conference. I will just share my PowerPoint because I made this beautiful PowerPoint. Let's see if we can find it on my very, 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 very cluttered desktop. My desktop is not for Virgos. So there we go. Yeah, the quincunx. That's how you write it. Sometimes it's known as the inconjunct. Let's just start from this one. And here we go. Let's see if I can do this in an hour. I have no idea, but we'll try. You know, I'm born with Mercury in Pisces, and for me, time is very relative. It's like, I don't know if I talked for 2 hours or for 3 minutes. I never know. So happy Valentine's, everybody. This is a day of love, as they call it. And for me, it's not a tradition. We don't carry this tradition in Norway, but it's, since we're globalizing, of course, it's becoming a part of our routines as well. It's part of that, you know, that break in everyday rhythm, and people seem to enjoy it quite much. I think every day should be a day of love. And love is actually one of the solutions to the quincunxes, because through love we can understand, or at least we can't always understand, but at least we can try to understand that which is far away from ourselves, which is the quincunx. It is so far away you can get sometimes. And love is that part that binds things together. It's that energy inside of us that hold space for those things that are incompatible with us, or that those things that are hard to accept or hard to understand, first and foremost. And I think understanding is a very important word when it comes to integration, when it comes to different synergies, when it comes to synthesis. We are here to be a whole. The zodiac chart is a whole wheel. And even though some of the energies are quite incompatible, through the energy of love, we manage to create union where there's diversity. And we love this diversity. I mean, relationships teaches us a lot about how to grow as human beings, and how to expand away from that very often quite limiting viewpoint that can be our egos. So I think we should celebrate the day of love every day, because I think we all came to Earth to learn about this quite not so known energy yet. We might say we love somebody, but this is a place where there's a lot of backstabbing, and there's a lot of talking behind people's backs, and there's a lot of criticism, and there's a lot of separation going on. A lot of it, actually. So still, love is not a verb. It's kind of an action. It's something that you have to give. It's not something necessarily that you receive. It's something that when a human being is learning the true art of giving, that's when they also start to touch upon the true nature of love. Giving is it's a radiation. When you give something, whether it's a lecture like this, or you give something from you share, you express something, that's giving. So it's not giving another person a gift, it's giving another person something that comes from you, your authentic self. And when we see giving from that viewpoint, we understand that it asks nothing in return. It's what Sting said. Music is its own reward. It just, the reward of being able to give something that comes deep within you. And that is love, and that's when any good relationship becomes a relationship of giving and giving. You give something to another human being by receiving it. And that's a different viewpoint, because of the quincunx, by its very nature, has a lot to do with tensions, and tensions are creating a lot of disruption and separation between people. We can see then that part of what is driving people into divorces and separation is exactly this: I gave so much, I got so little in return, this kind of mentality that is driving humanity. And therefore, I think, the solution will always be love. We have to start to love unconditionally. And I think that's one of the reasons, we are here together in all our diversity, is just to learn that little aspect. And it's a difficult concept, because it doesn't mean we should enable abuse, but Love is a very courageous quality as well. It will never accept abuse. It cannot thrive in abuse. It cannot exist where there is abuse. It will evacuate the building, sort of. So it will do very courageously the act of telling the truth and be respected for that. So yes, this is the symbol for the quincunx, or sometimes also known as the inconjunct. I will, for simplicity's sakes, just call it the quincunx because that's what I'm used to calling it. It's you can, you've probably seen the semi-sextile, which is also part of that 12th harmonic that belongs to the quincunx. It's the reverse of this symbol. I will just cover the quincunx today, but some people also would put in the same category the semi-sextile, which is 30 degrees apart. The quincunx is 150 and 210 degrees apart, all depending on whether it's an upper or a lower quincunx, and I will go through the differences between these. This is today, so happy Valentine's Day with Mars. That's lovely, huh? Mars in Taurus. That was a hefty one, this last little piece of Mars-Uranus. People were going crazy all over the place. But Mars is in beautiful Taurus now and will calm down a little bit. I mentioned the quincunx briefly. You will have this tension between the Sun in Aquarius, and then there's this underlying nodal axis development going on that we recently started. This journey backwards through Cancer, Capricorn, that will be the nodal transit for the next year and probably 6 months. And that has a lot to do with our personal needs. So it has to do with our personal preferences and what we our rhythm, our tempo, our biorhythm. That's Cancer for you. So the next couple of days, there might be some tensions between the Sun and that particular development going on. There will be this Aquarius demands us that we sort of detach a little bit and we don't take things so personal. We don't focus too much on our own needs. There's something very transpersonal that's been asked of us, like we have to sacrifice a part of ourselves, which is very often the theme with the three last sign, Capricorn, Aquarius and Pisces. These are the transpersonal signs, which means it's more group oriented than oriented towards your subjective personal life. And if I just rewind a little bit and we go back to this very interesting situation that I experienced while working for this business today, there were a lot of tensions between personal needs and subjectivity was part of the theme. People take things way too personal. And there were loads of tensions. Mars didn't ingress into Taurus before after lunch, and it was still at those last degrees of Aries, and it had been a rough day. People had been yelling at each other and, blaming each other for everything that went wrong. They had everything go wrong that day. It's a company that deals with logistics, and Mercury is way into Pisces by now. So the chaos had already been brewing for quite a while with Mars in Aries in the background. There's something a little bit chaotic with that, Mars-Uranus. And it requires from us that our needs, which we are trying to heal right now due to the North Node in Cancer, our needs weren't necessarily on the menu. It was required that we took a deeper responsibility. The moon was also in Gemini, and it made an inconjunct to these planets. That juicy combo of planets that are going on in Capricorn, and that we're going to have for quite a while still. This forget yourself and go back to business. You have duties. You cannot let stress and tension destroy your capacity for discipline. So, you know, discipline was required from that work group today, and that wasn't always so. They weren't capable yet. The consciousness, you know, needs to be elevated in order for us to see the right thing. Sometimes we have to step out of the situation and do what Aquarius does very well. Take a detached look at it, you know, take a step back and look at it, and then you can find the solution. So it was very interesting, you know, to see astrology come alive. That's always the best way to study astrology. And sometimes when I go into that particular place where there's a lot of consensus people, very intelligent people, we're very sweet people, but you know, consensus. And for me, it's just a great study place. You know, I can study these aspects, and I can study how people react on so many levels. And I always carry the astrology in the background of my head. You know, at the back of my head, I got my little phone with me, and I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Look at those inconjuncts. But what I could say in general, that this was a very stressful day for that particular work group. And due to the level of consciousness, the stress weren't handled in a Capricornian way. How would Capricorn deal with stress? Well, it would set themselves aside and do what is needed to be done. Instead, they had a lot of arguing back and forth, Moon in Gemini. There was a lot of arguing, a lot of blaming. I mean, if you blame, and from a Capricorn point of view, there's no blame. There's, you take your responsibility, you take your part of the whatever happened, and then we move on. Easy. This is a very Capricorn work group. They sort of had that too, you know, yeah, well, I can't blame anybody, but the tensions were brewing. And that's very normal for consensus, you know, not just consensus, but that's very normal for our civilized societies, that we rather suppress, which is one of the shadows of Capricorn, than to express. We rather suppress than to express. And what happens then? They were very glad I came. They're like, oh, thank God, yeah, finally I can release some tension. Healing is very good for that. You know, you work directly on the nervous system, you work on the energy. And we managed to kind of turn around something that could have exploded into inner tensions, and inner tensions turn into, you know, problems with your back and problems with your shoulders, and you hold these tensions into your body. And that's why the inconjunct or the quincunxes are very much associated with health. Health. Our bodies are good teachers, right? Now, let's just see. This is a classic inconjunct. I did not put, oh, how lame of me. I did not put in the signs. I was going to put in the signs. How elegant. Let me just write them in. Yep. This is what we call the natural zodiac. And here we have it. The natural zodiac, it begins with Aries, the natural first house, first sign energy, and we go to the 6th house, or we have the numbers in the inner circle, which is Virgo, and then we have the 8th house, which is Scorpio. So the signs associated with the quincunx are Aries, Virgo, and Scorpio, and it's very incompatible, as you can see. You know, there's if you know a little bit about the elements and the modes, you will see that they differ on every point. I just added these glyphs of planets just to make a visual out of it. There has to be actual planets for some astrologers to call it quincunx. Some people use the midheaven or the ascendant as well. I don't really have a clear idea whether or not to use the angles as vital points for quincunx, but I would definitely consider it if I saw it in a chart, because the angles are very important in terms of who we are. Signs on the angles are very important. They form the cross of matter, which in a way nails the persona to earth. It's our identity that is unfolding through these axes. And I would therefore absolutely consider them of great informational value if I saw a QUINCUNX to one of the angles in a chart. This is also a double QUINCUNX, as you can see. There's the way that I put it in there makes it a double QUINCUNX, and you probably heard about that. It's called the Yod, the finger of God, or the finger of faith, as we sometimes like to call it. And there's been a lot of work done on this already. I can recommend some of Maurice Fernandez's work on the Yod. He's done a lot of work, and there's lectures available for downloading, in particular on his work on the Yod, where you can get a lot of study material for this particular double QUINCUNX. I will, however, break it down into just, I will be satisfied with just exploring the QUINCUNX in itself, because that's a more rare aspect when you have a double QUINCUNX like this. It's absolutely something that you find in charts, but it's aspect configuration that are more rare. That is more rare. And I think, you know, if you look at a general chart, you can to find one or two QUINCUNXes in a chart. It's, you know, it's very normal. People have these aspects all the time, and they sort of bring in a lot of information of difficult aspects in a person's life. And it's very important information. So the Yod might be rare, but the QUINCUNX is very, very frequent. It was considered a minor aspect, and you know, just up until the 70s, people didn't pay much attention to it. They just called it a negative aspect, is one of the bad aspects of the astrology because of its difficulty with integration. You know, it's hard to integrate these very opposing qualities and elements, but it carries great fruits if we do that, and it is very important. It's part of the creational matrix of any chart, so it should absolutely be taken into consideration when doing a chart reading. I consider it a major aspect. I would never miss a QUINCUNX when I'm doing a reading. I will always go there, especially because I work with healing modalities on top of it. For me, that's where the tensions are. You know, you can call also the square a very tense aspect. It's more a formative aspect, if you ask me. It's a very strong aspect. The opposition might also be called a very tense aspect, but that's also very creative and expressive. It doesn't carry the same kind of frustration that the QUINCUNX carries. It carries a lot of growth and expansion, and therefore I consider it perhaps even more important to talk about than many other aspects in an astrology reading. You could really solve some deep issues with health and tensions for a client there if they manage to integrate these wildly opposing forces. And in synastry as well. I mean, sometimes we hear you shouldn't marry somebody who's got the sun opposite your sun or the sun square your sun. Yeah, well, you have the different elements. Yes, you do, but it's the same kind of quality. They are, let's say there's fixed suns squaring each other. They sort of operate in an energetically similar way. So they might be very compatible, opposed to what traditional astrology normally tells us about these aspects. So the inconjunct, on the other hand, requires a lot of adjustments. You really have to step out of your comfort zone to understand those relationships, and you really have to put your ego aside in order to make them work. I've seen it with numerous friends and couples that I've had in my surroundings, and I'm also going to show you the chart of me and my daughter a little bit later. Yes, we're taking off the clothes here today and showing off because she's Cancer and I'm Aquarius. And it is very, very good to have the astrology to create that level of consciousness, because through that me and my daughter, we can meet halfway. So I'm very grateful for that. And it's a great experience. And I don't have nothing in Cancer, and I need to learn it. So thank you. And she, you know, she needs to learn a little bit from my Aquarian vibe. So it's very interesting how we can learn a lot from each other through the inconjunct, through the quincunxes. Okay, so the incompatibility. This is the power struggle we sometimes get into, you know, because of our completely opposing views on the world. There's a different element in an inconjunct. Mixing them up in a quincunx. Sorry. Mercury is in Pisces. I can't talk straight. There's different elements. If we just go back to the Aries, to the Virgo, there's earth and fire, different, completely different. Earth and fire, I don't know. Normally they don't like each other that well. You know, the earth, you throw earth on fire, it strangles the fire. And then there's the upper quincunx, which is Scorpio to Aries, which is water to fire. And you see how water relates to fire. It can easily extinguish the fire. Throwing water on the fire, you know, just evaporating all enthusiasm in one little emotional silent treatment. There's also different modes, like cardinal to mutable and cardinal to fixed. We're going to see all the different pairs very soon. And it's also the last and third is it's yin to yang, you know. That can be good though, you know, a little yin to the yang is always good, but still, it's not always easy to operate these elements and make them cooperate, you know. It could be like this little picture where you're pulling at each other's, you know, rope. And it's like, I want to go that way. Well, you can't. I'm doing this. And it creates a lot of power struggles and tensions and discussions and nervous energy that is created in these particular combinations. It goes to show that humility is part of the package. We need to be humble enough to let go. We can't keep struggling. You know, it's a very divorcee kind of aspect. I've seen people who live together. I have a friend who's Pisces and he's married to a Leo Pisces thing. And he's a Pisces man, so he's very sensitive, and she's a Leo woman, and she's very energetic, and they just can't seem to be able to live in the same house. So they have two houses. He lives in one of them, and she lives in the other one. He can have his studio and record his music and sit peacefully for days on. And she can do all her salsa dancing and her Zumba and whatever she wants to do. And she's an actor, so she needs to make a lot of noise. He's a silent kind of folk musician who needs to have peace and quiet to write his music. So they still love each other. They have a child together, and they come together for these unions around the, you know, dinner table. They cook together and they do stuff together. So they found a way to live with the quincunxes. And it's been interesting to observe them over a course of 20 years and to see how they experimented to make this thing work. And then they lived apart and they broke up and they came together again. And they worked so much in figuring out my rhythm and your rhythm is so different. We need to figure out how to make these rhythms work together because we're creating discord. It's like you have an orchestra that is like, you have the trombone playing something and then you have the violin player playing something completely else, and there's no conductor to conduct the energy together. So they're like playing each their song, beating to a different drum, and you know, like they're not playing together. An opposition or a square can play together very well. You know, it's like, hey, yeah, energy. They create lots of energy together. When you have like somebody, you know, I'm fixed, I always go for the fixed people. You know, if all my friends are fixed, all my, you know, best lover relationships were with fixed people, you know, creating energy together. We create so much energy together. So that can be very compatible, but this It's like, oh, what's that sour tone? You know, you got to get the instrument tuned and working together, and then you can have a very special, smooth, and interesting, and creative, and educational tune coming out of it. So this is something I brought out from a book called the first 32 harmonics, and it's David Cochrane. And you know, the 12th harmonic, this is, you know, if you work with harmonics, the QUINCUNX belongs to the 12th harmonics. I will just read out loud what he writes about it. The 12th harmonics combines soft 3 and hard 4 qualities and represents basic resources available to the person. The only uniquely 12th harmonic aspects are the 112 and the 512 aspects, and the 512 aspects, QUINCUNX. The 112 he's talking about is the semi-sextile. The 512 is the QUINCUNX, is generally regarded as creating some discomforts or adjustments that is needed to be made by the 2 planets. The 112th aspect is usually regarded as having very minor influence. I don't know, I work a lot with semi-sextiles. You find them in the chart, you need to work with them. If they're there, you work with them. People operate with different orbs. I've seen the default on my program, my software, was about 5 for the QUINCUNX. I think it's a little generous. I would be even more specific, but it doesn't really matter if you have a planet in, you know, in Gemini and you have one in Capricorn and they're 5 degrees apart in orb. They're still in different signs, but the general rules applies. The tighter the orb, the more intense the aspect. Oh, good show. So here are, that's funny, tensions. That, I don't know, there was some, well, Mercury is in Pisces. I didn't write that. I took it out and it's there again, but it doesn't matter. The subtitle is not correct. So, okay, so Aries to Virgo, Scorpio. We already went a little bit through that. Aries wants to do things quite quickly. It just wants to get things done and not care about the details. Virgo, on the other hand, is very detail oriented and needs a lot of time in order to figure out what's the right approach to do anything. Aries wants to do things quickly and won't necessarily take into consideration emotions or fears or deeper aspects of the psyche. And that's Scorpio territory. Scorpio is all about finding enough resources to do things, and Aries can't be bothered to think about that. You know, I want to get it done, let's get it done yesterday. That's Aries. Whereas both Virgo and Scorpio needs a little bit more time to plan and to get ready. And then you have another kind of, and you can see this is particularly, if you see it in relationships, you're going to find a lot of struggles with this one. This is funny though, Taurus to Libra, both are Venusians. So I consider it a little lighter in its kind of tension, but still there's tension here. You know, Taurus is very relating to itself. It's relating to something inside itself. It's trying to find itself, to be quite honest. That's basically what you can say about Taurus. I'm trying to figure out who I am. Libra is constantly looking on the outside. It's going out, looking out, seeing outside, you know, being thoroughly interested in what goes on in other people's minds. Taurus might not be that interested. It doesn't want to bring in, you know, like the time. So if you find somebody with a Taurus Libra QUINCUNX, you might find somebody who's really having to work on the balance between me, my inner world, and us, the outer world. There's going to be a very strong tone of relationship challenges here. Taurus to Sagittarius is not that incompatible either. I often find these people come together in a relationship and it works because they definitely live in separate houses, and both of them love freedom. You know, it's very, very freedom oriented. But one of them might want to stay home all the time while the other one wants to travel the world. You know, Sagittarius is always out and about, and, you know, it has a different type of energy. It wants to go out and, you know, philosophize about the world and find out, you know, the meaning behind everything. For Taurus, it can be easy. I find meaning sitting here and doing my knitting. Yeah, that's meaningful. It's too boring for the Sagittarius, right? So these people can challenge each other a lot by their choices. And if you have that inside of yourself, well, you're going to have to work on that balance too. Gemini to Scorpio or Gemini to Capricorn. As you can see, it's one sign on each side of the opposition sign. Gemini to Scorpio is often something that I find, you know, can create a lot of psychological tension in a human being. It's the nervousness that comes together with water to air. It can be very neurotic, actually. You know, there's like all these fears from Scorpio that can arise, and Gemini translating them all the time. In a relationship, it can cause this incessant talking about deeper issues. Can be quite incompatible because Scorpio is can be very possessive, and Gemini can be very, very flirtatious, and that can be problematic. Gemini to Capricorn is the same kind of tension. You know, you always have that air-earth problem there. You know, Earth is very grounded. Capricorn is very serious and very prudent in a way, whereas Gemini is very open. And that's the same challenge with Gemini to Scorpio. Gemini can be super open, and Scorpio very, very secretive. I'm just doing it very general here. Keep in mind that these tensions bring out a lot of the shadow material in every sign. And it doesn't matter how evolved you are, you will still have to deal with the shadow material in a lot of your own planetary placements. Cancer to Sagittarius or Cancer to Aquarius. I mentioned briefly the Cancer to Aquarius. Cancer needs a lot of time. You know, I need my time to sit here and chill. Yeah, I need my time to sit. I need time to digest. Aquarius is super quick. You know, boom, I already understood it. I don't need, you know, you're boring me, Cancer. Come on, let's move. Me and my daughter had that challenge. Like, I was done before she even started thinking about it. I already had my shoes on. And, well, we weren't at the same rhythm, to be quite honest. Cancer to Sagittarius as well. You have a little bit of that outgoing, fiery quality of Sagittarius, challenging the very security-oriented Cancer. I want to go on a world trip, and Cancer goes, but I don't want to. I'm not ready yet. I don't need it. I need something very personal and something very close and something very intimate. Whereas Sagittarius needs a multitude of experience. It needs freedom. It needs to breathe. It needs to be liberated in many ways. Both Sagittarius and Aquarius has this quality that they need to be liberated, and Cancer needs loyalty and presence and something that is, you know, can make a promise and keep it. Sagittarius can easily change their mind. I know I told you yesterday, but today, I don't know, man, the world looks different. Leo to Capricorn, Pisces. Oh, this is a juicy one. I love this Leo to Capricorn. That was, you know, it's a little Hitler-esque, actually. You know, I thought of bringing in Hitler's chart, but I think, okay, it's been overused, so I chose not to. But Leo is, well, it's the leader meets the other leader. And I have a Capricorn friend that is so funny. He's this super Capricornian dude, and it's like he's always collaborating with these Leos. And he says the difference between Leo and Capricorn is that you can easily applaud a Leo and they will fall for it. But if you applaud a Capricorn and he knows the performance sucked, he'll be insulted. They don't fall for praise, Capricorn. Leo, if you just rub them the right way, they might even, you know, consider loving you. Capricorn don't really like attention. So see, you have a Capricorn Leo quincunx in your chart, you might have a big struggle to really go into the world, not stopping yourself. Capricorn will always say, hey, 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 where are you going? And Leo is, but I'm just here to express myself. Capricorn will be the dweller on the threshold in that case and say, don't rush it. You have to prepare first. You have to be real mature before you go on stage. We're not taking any mediocre stuff. And Pisces to Leo, well, Pisces can be, it's a little more difficult to understand. They can be very compatible in many ways, but as I mentioned, my Pisces Leo compadres, this Leo is very noisy. She's very energetic, and Pisces is really sensitive and not always so happy about all the noise. So it's that one part that wants to withdraw and the other part that wants to go out into the world and have lots of fun. You can say in general with quincunxes, they find fun in different places. They find meaning in different places. And then it just repeats itself, Virgo to Aries, Aquarius. It's interesting though, Virgo is sometimes compatible with Aquarius. I don't know, there's something with, I dated a Virgo once. And even for me, I thought he was thinking way too much. That's just way too much thinking, man. You think too much. And I'm Aquarius, with a moon in Gemini. When I think somebody thinks too much, then they really think too much. But it's all that analyzing and the details and everything that freaks out the Aquarius. It's just like, hey man, you forget the bigger picture. You have to get the bigger picture, rise above all these nitty-gritty details and just remember the vision. That's what Aquarius says. So it's not so analytical, or it's a different kind of vibe to their mental style. And Virgo to Aries, I already mentioned, Virgos get stressed out by Aries because of their hurried energies. And looking back at the quincunx in its natural zodiac, you can understand why this is creating physical tensions, and very often occurs in charts where there are some chronic diseases that needs to be figured out, or some chronic conditions that needs to be figured out, psychological tensions, which is more the Aries to Scorpio energy. Yeah, so Libra goes to Pisces, Taurus, Scorpio to Aries, Gemini, which I already mentioned, Scorpio to Aries. Scorpio to Aries, a fixed emotional sign to a cardinal fire sign. There can be some power struggles there. So Aries, they are very authentic. They want to keep it real, and Scorpio are very careful with opening up completely. Aries can be extremely trusting, so can Gemini. So here we have a quincunx pair that sort of opens the door to themes around trust. Learning to trust again, learning to communicate your inner world, learning to express yourself, learning to be who you are on the inside, also coming out into the world. Oh, and Sagittarius, it's sometimes I haven't had many Sagittarians in my life, which is funny because I have my North Node there. I often thought that I would be very, very drawn to Sagittarius, but I'm not. So I seem to learn a lot from other signs, but Sagittarius, sometimes by joke, I hate to be a little, how do you say, I hate to be generalizing, but I call it the eternal backpacker. The eternal backpacker, Sagittarius to Taurus, and Taurus and Cancer, very homely people. Capricorn to Gemini, Leo, it's all about that seriousness, being challenged by the playfulness of Gemini, Leo. Aquarius to Cancer, Virgo, back again to Pisces, Leo, Libra. So there we go. The circle is completed. You can play around with this forever, because I know by the literature available on QUINCUNXes, not a lot of depth work is done in particulars. You get this very easy, it's an Aries to a Virgo Scorpio thing, and that's it. You don't get this kind of overview. What does the specifics of the sign tell you, you know? So just play around with it if you really want to learn more. This is the lower waxing. It's 150 degrees. It's Aries to Virgo, and Virgo is a very earth sign, so it goes to the body very much. So we call it the health aspect. And here's a woman who carries one of those. She died through her abuse, and she has a very creative Sun Venus conjunction in Leo, Whitney Houston, and it makes lower 150 degrees aspect to Chiron in Pisces. Why is it lower? Because Chiron is the slowest moving planet here, and the sun is moving this way. It's moving towards Virgo, which would be the opposition point to this point. So it's moving towards the opposition, and that makes it a lower or a waxing quincunx, which is 150 degrees. It's very important that you are able to decipher the differences. So it sort of, you know, adds a little Virgo energy to her already Virgo chart. So we can say that it adds nervous tension to her chart, which means that at one point she will have to figure out how to solve this nervous tension in her body. All her Virgo perfectionism and worries and everything that comes with the territory, her details like fixations. Virgo has this shadow of a little being OCD sometimes, and that's part of the health aspect of it, and control and fixations. And she solved it with using drugs and entering the realm of Chiron in Pisces, you know, feeling powerless, to be quite honest. So her power, her creative power, was challenged a lot by this powerlessness of the Chiron in Pisces. She was married to this dude, a guy with a lot of inconjuncts, actually Saturn to Mars. He's got the upper quincunxes. And why is it an upper? Because Saturn, Mars is moving away from the opposition point. Mars is over here in Scorpio, right? And it's moving away, so it's moving this way. It's the faster moving planet. He's also got a moon, Pluto, in a moving away lower quincunx. Oh, I'm sorry, upper quincunx, waning quincunx. The lower quincunx is the Virgo, the upper quincunx is the Scorpio. So he's got this psychological kind of quincunxes. He's got a little of a power struggle going on. And to be quite honest, Whitney was a lot bigger than he was. He, you know, might have been some issues around jealousy. There's been some allegations about domestic violence. Somebody with Mars in Scorpio, quincunx, Saturn in Aries have a lot of aggressive tension holding in, psychological tension in themselves. So it's plausible, you know, he's denied the accusations, understandably. Who would want to go and say, yeah, I bashed her around, you know, but still there's plenty of tensions to sort of, Your Honor, I think we have somebody who needs some therapy, you know, like somebody who needs to solve his tensions in a way. Yeah, so here we go, upper or waning. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired, so I'm messing around with this upper lower thing, but this is 210 degrees. And that is the Scorpio. So we call it the death aspect. Well, something has to die, you know, before something can be reborn, right? There's a strong power orientation in this one, a psychological orientation. So this is the way you can see it in a very easy, generalized way. This is another woman who struggled quite a bit before she died. Recently, actually, one of my favorites, because I'm a big, huge Star Wars fan, and I think Leia was my favorite of them all, the coolest woman in town, you know. Oh, I really loved her. And she's got a double one, and it is moving away from the opposition point. The sun, the moon is moving away from the opposition point. So it's also a Scorpio undertone to this one. And Mercury is moving away from the opposition point to her Mars. So she's got this double Scorpio undertone in her quincunxes, which makes her psychologically extremely volatile in a way. And she struggled her whole life with bipolar diseases, lots of alcohol abuse and pills. And she's got an excellent stand-up show, one-woman show, that is, I think, available on YouTube, and you can see it and you will really understand how many struggles she had in her life, the tensions, she couldn't find harmony within herself. And that can very often be the case when people have a lot of quincunxes. You can't find peace. You can't find peace. It's always, it's hard to solve. But the solutions will always be flexibility, you know. A flexible spine is a flexible mind, we say in yoga. And that will be the capacity to make adjustments. So that we can actually make things work. You know, I surf a very intense quincunx myself between Venus and Saturn. And it's constant work on this one. I constantly work on myself. Creativity can prove to be an extremely good outlet for these tensions. Absolutely, because there's some kind of suppressive mechanism going on with the quincunxes. And if you have a creative outlet, the tensions can be released. You know, like I can write a poem about my Venus, my Saturn in Gemini can write a poem about my Venus in Capricorn, and I feel, you know, like I feel I can release it. It's nice. I do that a lot, actually. And there's this understanding that needs to come as well, wisdom and understanding. You just have to, you know, carry a deeper viewpoint or a higher viewpoint, and accept that you're a whole human being. You can only be a whole human being. You cannot be like 3 or 4 different perfect people. You are everything. You can have bad days and good days. And sometimes the quincunxes make you go into really deep tensions inside of yourself that you can't always get, you know, released from there and then. They prove to give you a lot of insight into yourself. And the humility, you know, putting your ego aside, accepting the situation, working on your tensions through yoga and your psychological toolkit, you know, that's the solution that you know, orientation that you need to have in order to make these things work as an orchestra that plays the same tune. We want the whole chart to work as an orchestra that are playing the tune of the soul. The soul has the score, the planets needs to play together. Now, this is my dear daughter and me. And well, this is my chart, my very airy chart. I have loads of air. She's very fiery. Her inner chart is very fiery, watery. She has both moon and sun in Cancer. And you can see, like, we have a lot to learn from each other. Her wisdom and her proximity to her emotions is what inspires me most. She's very, as a matter of fact, with her feelings, and I'm much more, you know, going and analyzing and detaching, and, you know, having a personal life is always the challenge for an Aquarian. And Cancer is so personal. I don't want to do it because I don't feel like it. That's hard for an Aquarian with loads of Capricorn to actually say. And look at that, she's got Pluto on my North Node, so she's my little angel on Earth. So I help her speed things up, and she helps me speed things down, or, you know, slow things down, I guess. You can also look at a composite with the quincunxes, which is super interesting because, you know, this is a composite of somebody with a great attraction to each other, with great Scorpio attraction. And there's all this Scorpio juice here, and it's very passionate and strong. But then there's a quincunx between Mars and Neptune. There's a quincunx between Pluto and Ceres. So there's like this thing that stops the relationship from evolving. I know these people, and it's like, it's creating lots of energy when they're together. And then all these other aspects are just, there's no will to keep the energy going. Mars is also making a quincunx to Venus and Uranus. So it's like the relationship just gets lost in every day-to-day activities. Like there's just too many things happening. So there's not enough peace and concentration to get into the depth of Scorpio. It's very interesting to observe. And I would just suggest that you just observe quincunxes in synastries, in your natal charts, in your clients' natal charts, and in composites. They are all valid. And it's the same struggle, something that is really tearing things apart in a way. Yeah. So I did it. An hour of quincunxes. I'd never
Thank
thought.
you very much.
You're welcome.
Would you like a Q&A section? Or?
Yeah, sure. If people have some questions, that would be super fun. I'm still, well, now I'm all fired up.
You're still awake.
Yeah, so I was so tired earlier today. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Thank you for staying up for us. And any questions from our audience?
Any quincunxes around? Somebody have a beautiful quincunx? Oh yes, we have one hand up in the air. I can't see you others. And has it been a challenge to get to know these planets? Yeah, it is really. There's a lot of self-work that needs to be done, and I think that's why it's so incredibly, often that we see people with quincunxes turn to astrology, because you want to learn to understand yourself first and foremost, because through the power of understanding we can make things work, we think. But then there's process and balancing acts. And yeah.
So could you please comment on a quincunx chart? For example, my first house is Scorpio, so the natural house is Aries. So we have the Scorpio overlay on top of the Aries.
Yeah, well, that's just like, that's interesting. And what's your Mars doing? I would have to ask you about your Mars. I like the whole picture.
My Mars is in the 6th house, so therefore it is also like a quincunx energy.
Yeah, so it carries
So
this
the whole chart is like that. So, like, am I completely torn apart, or I've maybe learned to be flexible, I guess?
Yeah. Well, there you go. What's the humility aspect with that? It's knowing it's learning to, it's knowing when to do what, that would be a great mantra for you. It's like when to do what, when to be fixed, when to be stubborn, when to be consistent in my behavior and say no. I said no, and when to
true,
and when to be flexible, when to say, okay, hands up, you're right, I'm going to yield. It's not that important.
I think I came in already a bit like that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Refreshers. There's always, you've got to keep doing it.
I always look at the whole picture, and I would definitely take into consideration if you had one of these will power challenges that comes with that territory. Power and will and boundaries and saying no, etc., which is very important for anything first house and Scorpio in particular, because you have the resources you have and you can't squander them on being taken advantage of or being in one way or another abused, So then I would naturally look for your Venus and your moon and what happens around your Chiron, and I will just take a quick overview of all the energies to see which one is coming out the strongest. And for you, it would probably be the Venusian side, the pleasing side. You're a woman on top of it, and we all know how we've been breastfed into being very nice and gentle. So for you, it's like coming to terms with your Kali energy again and just saying, I'm not going no. And then, and there are the times you can embrace and be this motherly Venusian, embracing, holding space and be understanding, but you have
Mm.
to know when to do what, right?
Oh, you've described it perfectly. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Look,
you're
we
welcome.
have one question in the chat, if that's
I see
okay.
Maya. Hi, Maya.
Yeah.
What's the orb you generally use for the quincunx? You have a lot of quintiles. Well, you mystic woman, huh? That's also an interesting aspect, but it, you know, like it doesn't really relate to tensions like that. But the quincunx is, what's the orb? Well, as I previously mentioned, the orbs is always a question of general energy in a chart. You know, I always look at the general energy in a chart, and then I can see, even if one aspect with a fairly wide orb, let's say there's a stellium of planets in one sign, in a quincunx aspect to a very important planet in another sign, you know, let's say the sun, it's making a wide quincunx aspect to 3 planets, the sun in Capricorn making a wide aspect to 3 planets in Gemini. I wouldn't go into any kind of orb discussion with myself right there, because I would see the 2 signs are so pronounced in their energy in the chart. This is why the older I get, the more I sort of lean on archetypal understanding of the chart. It's sign to sign more than anything. But of course, I would generally use for a minor, you know, for one of the bi characters in a chart, if you can sort of take away the general archetypal themes and you have some minor players in a chart, I would use tight orbs. I would use like a 3-degree. But if it's the major players in a chart, it's the main characters in a chart, I would be more generous with the orbs. And I think that's part of the difficulties of understanding a chart, is that you have to find the major characters and then the minor characters, the lead roles, and the, you know, the characters that are just coming in and out from time to time. And that's really the art of chart synthesis, I think. And it relates to orbs in general, because that will just become natural for you, the way you see orbs, when you start seeing it like this. But I'm a big fan of tight orbs. I'm a big fan of tight orbs because I know that then for me they then become extremely karmic. That becomes a very specific karmic situation. So if you look at the, you know, from an evolutionary point of view, as taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green, with the waxing and the waning, you know, it's waxing to consciousness through full moon, and it's waning, it's releasing something. You know, it's like you grow in consciousness and then you have to let go of something in your consciousness when it's waning. So that's also a point we could have explored. And here's Annie. I have Chiron in Taurus and Pluto, Mars, Venus conjunct in Libra. The quincunx is in orb with Mars. Okay, all right. Chiron in Taurus. Okay, you're born there. And Chiron in Taurus, Pluto, Mars conjunct in Libra. Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Okay. So what is Chiron in Taurus? Huh? Well, it's the body very much, actually. It's the body, it's resources, it's money, it's your body, it's your senses, it's your sensuality, it's being able to connect with the body, and there might be some kind of wounding there. So, Chiron Mars, you know, we're moving into a Chiron and Aries phase, and it's all about finding the strength to be able to stand firm in your decisions, not being in this dualistic mode that Libra often brings into the chart energy. So that would be the tension of it. But all 3 would be together, right? Well, how can you separate Pluto, Mars, Venus, and Libra from each other? The Mars aspect would be the most precise one, absolutely, but you can't separate them really. You know, they tell a story themselves. They tell a story of a lot of relationship experiences, tensions, challenges, growth. And this growth is very important, but it really challenges Taurus energy, because Taurus needs to be with itself to grow. It needs to grow in itself. So this is really a quincunx you can't separate the stellium there. And looking at it together, it would mean that, you know, any relationship needs to be sustainable on many levels, also, you know, physical levels. And the challenge would be to keep it living forever, something that is eternal. That's what Taurus is looking for, something that never dies. And with Pluto, Mars, Venus, well, there will be a lot of changes, sudden changes very often. So that might be, you know, it wasn't your original question, but yes, I would absolutely put them all three together. It would be impossible for me to see them apart. Yeah. Interesting. Quincunx, this one. I like the Chiron quincunxes.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
I have the other quincunx chart. I'm a Virgo ascendant. And
oh yeah, there you go. Yeah.
it kind of, the way I've kind of approached it is to kind of use that opposite energy of Pisces and look for the connection. Because even though, you know, the two energies look like they are incompatible, there's always that one similarity that can connect the two together.
It's very beautiful. Yeah.
So, you know, like the Aries Virgo, Aries likes to, you know, move ahead without obstruction. And Virgo, of course, to me is efficiency. So both would not like to have to go back and redo the same thing, you know, over again, because that stops the Aries from moving forward. And, you know, that the inefficiency pisses the Virgo off. So it's to me looking for that connecting factor and running on your own rhythm and realizing that your rhythm is not going to necessarily go with the normal flow. When you try to go with that normal flow, that's when the tension builds up. That's, you know, when you go with that, you know, that offbeat, it seems to flow better. And it's a very creative aspect.
Yeah. Creativity. I mean, earth and fire, when it works together, despite its incompatibility, it creates incredibly independent human beings. There's a great book that's called Relating that Liz Green wrote, and I absolutely adore that book. I come back to it time after time because she's so good with the elements. And it's one of the few books I actually managed to read, you know, because it's so to the point, you know. So, but yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, Wanda. Thank you. I mean, that's a super cool way of seeing it. And I would definitely, you know, somebody with a natural Aries Virgo disposition would naturally be extremely independent and could have a little cooperative challenges, but it's very resourceful once it gets started. There's always this challenge with procrastination that sometimes comes with the Virgo energy, but so you know, dealing with impatience is just part of the way to go about it. But once there's this flow in it, it's very creative. It's very anything. I have great respect for people with fire earth, because I have no fire in myself, and I'm thinking, oh my god, wow, these people are self-motivated like crazy. It's a good combo. There's always a golden nugget in everything, you know. Attention, you know, if you don't have tension, you don't get to do very much. Attention, for instance, you know, attention is needed. We need tension to get something going. So for us, it's just about agreeing with ourselves, you know. And it's an interesting point you bring there, because it probably, seen from the individuation process, the quincunxes help us move along that line. Like, we have to do it in our style, and it's, you know, you can't look to others for solutions. You have to really solve it yourself, etc. So it might have some deeper layers of individuating people, you know, like you brought into this life this quincunx so that you can learn to individuate and learn to solve your own energetic tensions in a way. I don't know if I have time for this, but hi again, Soul, this Delphine with yods. Do you focus on the apex planets to solve tensions or on the planets in sextile? I have 2 yods with Saturn, both as the apex in Taurus or as the... Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I ever gave that much thought, actually, because I tend to see holistically on a chart. Like there's, the planets are the energy centers, the way that I see it in you. And each of them have a solution point. So I would look for every planet as a solution point. But when Saturn runs away with being the apex planet to 2 yods, then I would consider it extremely important in that chart, to be quite honest. It really brings in a lot of focus on that Saturn. So I would definitely say that, okay, you're going to spend some time in your life figuring out that Saturn in Taurus, right? That's interesting. Wow. Interesting, because that really has to do with resources and understanding your resourcefulness and not denying your talents to the world. So that's interesting. And Mars as apex. Oh, so okay. So oh yeah, so there's another. This is shown on the. I have 2 yods with Saturn as both the apex. And
Yeah, I saw. Just to correct.
Yeah, I didn't see that. Oh, yeah.
So yes, Saturn is apex in 1 yod.
Okay, all right. So not in both.
But it's also the base of another yod.
Ah, I see.
So I don't know where to start with.
Okay.
Mars or Saturn.
Yeah. Well, both of them needs to take on. Both of them needs some fair amount of work, right? Yeah. Attention. Yeah, it needs attention. So
what is it? Is it discipline? I have to work on my discipline because I have issue with discipline.
Well, anybody with Mars in Sagittarius might run into a little bit of disciplinary problems when it comes to, what Mars is supposed to do, making decisions and, using the energy with focus. So if everything is dispersed in every direction all the time, you have resources moving out the window, it's just flying out the window. Time is wasted. And that's the Saturn thing, resources aren't unending. You have to use your time on Earth with some sort of focus. So I would say, but you can't be too hard on that Mars either, otherwise that will definitely rebel. If you try to sort of like say to Mars, okay, I'm going to put you in this, box here and you cannot go out because we're going to stay in and do something really focused, that hyperactive Mars is going to burn up inside, and you've got to find a way to sort of, deal with that Martian tension. And that, I would just suggest, climb some mountains, run in the woods, make some noise, scream it out, get it out, and get that Mars to settle a little bit, because you can stabilize and make it steadfast through the proper kind of action, actually. And it's in the 4th house. Okay, so redo your house and whatever, there's like plenty of stuff you can do with your Mars, but it needs a little bit of freedom. Yeah, so it's like you love that freedom. I just want to do what I want to do when I want to do it, I love to be home and fix my walls, or I'm gonna move that painting over there, but and then there's this demand to do something that the Saturn is a planet of consequences. You have to do something that gives some fruits. The fruits of your labor. This is what Saturn is realizing. The fruit, you have to use your resources in a way that brings in the gold, the money, being.
So it's the talents too.
It's a very intense aspect, and I would think that yoga would be excellent for you, and breath work and all kinds of things, like some fiery yogas. Just get the fire moving. Don't keep it in your limbs. Yeah, there's sometimes you have arthritis and you have all kinds of stiffness in the limbs, and a lot of this Mars energy, especially for women, are often, just stored in the body. And I would think, for you, especially with Saturn in Taurus, that could be like a little bit of bodily challenge, or like you have to, you know, work on your body a little bit so that, you know, this Mars energy is not causing inflammations or, you know, erupts on the internal levels.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that was fun. Yoo-hoo, I like this. I love these online readings. It's so cool to meet people, and like, thank you for sharing. I really honor it. I consider the chart a sacred spot, and I consider giving any comments on any chart to be very humbling indeed, because I know from experience that all advice is not good advice. So it's always nice to be a little gentle on the bombastic side. Yeah. All right. Oh, here's April. I have quincunx 2-6 between Pluto 4 degrees, first life and death, eternal life now. Pluto and Sun. Oh, wow. You go in deep. That's for sure. That's like a double Scorpio energy, if you ask me. And the signs in which the Sun and the Pluto is situated would definitely show a little bit the precise aspects of what type of archetypes you are integrating. Interesting, but that's really powerful. Yes, winding down now. Thank you, everybody. This was super fun. Oh, it's from Libra Taurus. Thank you, April. Okay. Well, we are winding down. I'm sorry. So let's have another party in not so long, and you guys are probably going to go on and see